All right, everyone, hit the subscribe button, and you get the notifications for when we go live. And also keep in mind that while the Buckeyes have the number one class according to all the major services, Alabama's bearing down. They've jumped from like 40 to 2 in the blink of an eye. And certainly they've signed, they've had 3 commits in the top 100 just in the last few days. Do you guys put much stock? We'll start with you, Tony, in the recruiting championship.
Well, Urban Meyer did. He would say, like, if there's something to be won, why shouldn't we want to win it? Now, does it guarantee anything? No, but no individual recruit guarantees anything. But if you land the best class in the nation year after year, you're going to be in the playoffs. That's because your head coach is going to be too good to screw it up because he's good enough to land all of these guys. Thinking that Alabama wouldn't make a run would be like, watching Hulk Hogan in the 80s, thinking he's not going to get the big leg drop and, start doing the nose and things like that. Like he's just going to get walked over. That's not what Alabama does. And, with the visits, the lack of visits, I thought maybe they would really pick up steam once the visits were allowed to happen. And clearly they don't, the visits hasn't been the important thing. It's just, for them, it's just a matter of time. I don't think anybody – the only way they would finish out like the top 10 or something is because they only signed 16 or 17 guys, and even then they're probably like at 9 or 10.
Yeah, for me, do we know that we're going to have a college football season? No. So nothing is more important than the national championship to me because that's a known quantity at this point, and that might be all we have to market here for a couple of months. So it's extremely damn important. At Rivals, Alabama is the number 7 team because they're only sitting with 15 kids, and in the Rivals formula, we take into account the top 20. Nobody should be surprised that they're making a move at this point. Ohio State certainly has a large lead, almost 900 points over Alabama at this point, with Ohio State sitting at 19 kids versus Alabama's 15. We always have said that schools like Alabama really don't start recruiting until November or December. So they're gonna really push Ohio State. I think Ohio State will end up with a number 1 class. I think they need to do well recruiting the state of Washington, and anybody who follows recruiting knows what I'm talking about there. But this class just has a different feeling to it. Pretty much any kid that's still on Ohio State's board is going to push the Buckeyes over 3,000 points in the Rivals rankings, which generally is good enough to get you a top 2 or 3 class. And by the time it's all said and done, I think Ohio State will put together the highest statistic class in the Rivals.com era, which goes back through 2002.
And if there is no season and Alabama does win the recruiting championship, they will count that as a national championship. It'll be on T-shirts. It'll be on. There'll be a ring. I don't know. Can you give the signees a ring right away? Fans will claim it as a national title. Wikipedia will claim it as a national title. So, yeah, Kevin's right.
So, Kevin, we've got, of course, Rivals. We've got 247 Sports. We've got ESPN. I believe that those are the 3 that are contributing to the composite. Do we have anybody else out there that matters? Not really.
Not that I'm aware. Not that does a national ranking per se. I know that there are people who do evaluations or whatnot, but I don't think anybody who goes to the effort to go coast to coast.
Tom Lemming, wherever he went, he seemed like he was the original out there, back in the 80s. So what is the known distinction between how those various services rate the players?
I can't speak for other networks or whatnot. I just know what goes into our process. And I know we're still really early. A lot of people sit there and they say, well, Rivals only has a handful of 5 stars. By the time we get to the end of the cycle, 17, 18 5 stars turns into 35, 37 5 stars. There's a lot of room. And of course, maybe the tinfoil hat crew might come out and say, well, the Bama bump hasn't happened yet or whatnot. But, I know how our organization does it. And we have guys who are in charge of certain regions. And then all of the publishers, we feed information into our regional guys who then take it to the national meeting. And then that's how they rank them. But, beside that, I haven't really studied how anybody else does it.
A few years back, I was looking at ESPN's rankings and how they came about, what they did. And because there's the thought that Ohio and the Midwest gets kind of ignored by ESPN. So I was looking into that. And at that point, they had like one guy evaluating Ohio in the Midwest and like 3 or 4 in the Southeast and, 1 or 2 out West. So it's like, you can kind of see that they were stretched a little too thin maybe. And I know ESPN has had some cuts over the years in terms of their staff. So maybe that plays into it some, but everybody, there's so many different ways to skin the cat, as they say. And what I don't, I go back and forth. Like I don't like the kind of like with our AP balloting that we talked about, where is it predictive or are you telling us who is the best? Like I think with 24/7, I think they do like they view them projecting them as like first round picks and like who projects best down the road. I kind of like who is the best high school player in the class. That's maybe what I like best in terms of like who is going to have the most success in college. I'm not really into the NFL thing. Like I don't need you projecting 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road. Let's just keep it here in the 1, 2, 3 year thing here, because every year you go out further, you get less accurate. So let's kind of just keep it close to home, as close to home as we can, and let's just see like what kind of college impact do you expect that person to have.
Well, one of the issues too that I have with how services in general do it is I think that there's kind of a geographical formula that, well, we know Florida and Texas and California turn X amount of talent, and the truth of the matter is if the 25 best players come from Rhode Island, I think we have to sit there and recognize the 25 best players come from Rhode Island in a specific year. I mean, that's not going to happen. But with that being said, I don't know if I'm going to say, well, we know that the state of Colorado traditionally only has 3 or 4 kids that are of a certain level, so we need to kind of use that model on top of it. It's such an impossible task in the first place, being able to split hairs between the number 3 defensive tackle in the country versus the number 9 wide receiver. Where do you come to that decision that the number 3 DT is kind of in the same ballpark as the number 9 wide receiver? I mean, defensive tackle is such a tough position to find in the high school level that's going to move up because we see so many ends that slide inside just for one reason or another. And I'm just using that as a hypothetical. But I'm not a big proponent of using a map template of saying, well, we know that such and such is coming out of certain states, therefore we need to apply that into how the rankings work.
Talking Ohio State football here each and every Friday. We got Tony Gruderman on the line from Buckeye Scoop and also Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove on Rivals. Also keep in mind that I post college football content here every day, and also have focused quite a bit on the Big Ten schedule. Hit that from a number of perspectives in recent days. The ACC schedule as well, or proposed schedule, or what's being projected. Also keep in mind that just in the last few days we did a profile on Jordan Hancock. We also looked at Ohio State's running back situation and what the history has been minus or after a great all-time season in which, of course, J.K. Dobbins turned in. And then a look at the quarterback U, as people are concerned, some college football fans, as to who's DBU, who's QBU, and it's so forth and so on. And looking at Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Clemson with a guest there. And also just in the last couple of weeks, getting together with our guy Steve Dace over on Michigan Podcast to produce the 10-minute war between the two of us. So that's been fun for the last few weeks.